Spoiler alert, The Fablemans is going to win the Oscar this year, and that sucks. Not because it's a bad film. I actually think it's one of the highlights of Steven Spielberg's whole career. And Lord knows he deserves another Best Picture Oscar. He only has like two. One. He actually only has one. He does deserve another Oscar, but he shouldn't get it this year. That's because the Oscar should go to another picture. The film we've been hearing about all year with the wacky title, Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is the best movie of the year. Maybe the best movie of the past few years. I mean, this movie changed me. And I'm not the only person who said that. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. When I first saw it, I said to myself, that film deserves the Oscar. Now that I've seen how award season has played out, I can safely say that's just not gonna happen. There are a few golden rules, or factors if you will, that go into securing the Best Picture Oscar. These factors are based on history and statistics. It's almost formulaic. You'll see. After this video, you're gonna wanna place all your Oscar bets on The Fablemans. All right, here we go.
And the Oscar goes to...
The Oscar goes to...
And the Oscar goes to...
So let's start off by asking the all-important question. Why does anybody care about the Oscars? Let's be honest. At some point in all of our lives, we've all given an imaginary Oscars speech. I just gave one in the shower for Best YouTube Video. We'll cut that out. Stupid jokes aside, something you gotta understand about winning an Oscar is it's not just about getting a trophy and giving a teary acceptance speech. It means different things to different people. For the majority of people, putting an Oscar on your resume typically means prestige and most likely more work. Winning Best Performance can catapult an unknown actor to the A-list overnight. Best Director winners will have more projects thrown at them than they know what to do with. But if you're a producer on a film that wins Best Picture, it's a completely different ballgame. Studios typically spend over $10 million on an Oscar campaign, which is like placing a $10 million bet on a horse race. That's a lot of money, but it's a gamble they're willing to make for a good reason. Check out these numbers. If you win Best Picture, you'll typically increase your ticket sales by almost 50%. If you're lucky, you'll even double or triple your profits. Or you'll just do what the King's Speech did when they won. They originally intended to make $30 million. When they won Best Picture, they ended up making over $400 million. Yeah, that's over 10 times what they were hoping for. And that's all because the Academy declared it the year's Best Picture. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is it wasn't always like this. In order to really appreciate just how outrageous it's become, we gotta go back to the very first ceremony. It was totally different. In fact, it was actually just a casual dinner. Picture it, 1929. You're in the elegant Blossom Room of the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. You're either a filmmaker or an actor or a director or something to do with Hollywood. You're at a fancy schmancy dinner surrounded by 250 of your closest Hollywood buddies. You're either having the salmon or the chicken. Everybody's drunk. More importantly, nobody's nervous. Everybody's just having fun. It's more like a work party. That's what it was. It was like a work party. That was the Oscars back then. It was a simple dinner held by the president of the Academy for a few close friends. Well, a few hundred close friends. It was still a big party. But it wasn't televised. There was no red carpet. It wasn't even close to the circus it is today. You may even walk out of that ballroom with a gold statue of a naked dude holding a sword thinking, what the heck is this? Huh? It's broken. It's broken. Props broken. So I tell you this only to remind you that the Oscars have changed. I mean, man, have they changed. Look at them now. The suckiest change of all between the first Oscars and now is that if this was 1929, both The Fablemans and Everything Everywhere would have won. There were two categories for Best Picture back then. Outstanding Picture and Outstanding Unique and Artistic Picture. According to the Academy Award organizers in 1929, each award is intended to honor different and Each award is intended to honor different and unique aspects of superior filmmaking. Keyword, different. If only they still felt that way. I would have loved to see both The Fablemans and Everything Everywhere on stage together, holding their respective trophies, just one big happy winner circle.
Hooray! Everyone's a winner!
But here we are. We gotta move on, we gotta get to the good stuff. Now, before we get into all that criteria stuff, I wanna talk about the two top contenders. First, we have The Fablemans. Now, this is one of the most moving films I've ever seen, and I mean it, even though I keep trashing it. It's a beautiful story. What makes it so special is that it's a semi-autobiographical story loosely based on Spielberg's own adolescence. He shares with us his early memories of when he first discovered the art of filmmaking. This is a treat. We actually get to see where Spielberg's filmmaking genius came from by watching a film that could be considered one of the best movies of his career. The film shows his childhood experiences through the eyes of a young boy named Sammy Fableman, hence the title. Sammy discovers the magic of movies after his first trip to the theater with his parents. The film they go to see this is so appropriate, The Greatest Show on Earth. Sammy is spellbound and even attempts to recreate a crash scene from the movie with his train set and his camera. It's awesome. Seeing 7-year-old Steven Spielberg put together his first movie is something I never thought I'd see before. It doesn't stop there, though. It's so much more than that. It's about the difficulties of marriage, parenting, and really just what it feels like to be a young boy finding your way in the world. It may be about Steven Spielberg's childhood, but I actually left the theater reflecting on my own childhood. So yeah, you gotta go see it. The second contender is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Okay, I'm gonna try to explain this film. It's kind of a trip. It's actually indescribable because it's like everything in the universe just rolled into one movie. What's even cooler is that it's one of the hottest films of the year, but it came from the minds of two relatively unknown filmmakers, Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, who collectively go by the Daniels. I think that's awesome. The story centers on a Chinese-American immigrant played by the incredibly versatile Michelle Yeoh. Her versatility came in really handy in this film. She did it all. She did martial arts, she made me laugh, she made me cry, you name it, she did it. I think it's actually one of the best performances she's ever given. Back to the plot. While in the process of being audited by the IRS, her character discovers that she's got to connect with other versions of herself in parallel universes. I swear this is what it's about. This is in order to prevent a powerful being from destroying the multiverse. Yeah, it's trippy. It's absurd, it's funny, it's sad at times, there's action sequences, sci-fi. I actually have no idea what genre it is, to be completely honest, but whatever it is, it's amazing. People kept telling me to go see it, but they just couldn't put into words exactly what it was I was going to see. And once I saw it for myself, I understood why. You really just have to go see it for yourself. So the big question, why is The Fablemans such a shoo-in for Best Picture if Everything Everywhere is so good? Let's examine the criteria needed to be considered a shoo-in for Best Picture. First up, release date. The Academy has a strict yet simple release policy to even be considered for an Oscar. There are 4 easy rules. It has to be 1, released to the public, can't be a private viewing. 2, released in a theater, can't be your living room. 3, released in one of the major metropolitan areas in the US. And I think that's like LA or New York, Chicago, I have no idea. And 4, released for 7 consecutive days. Easy enough, right? You're on your way to an Oscar. No, you're not. The most important factor in how you release your film is when you release it. Now remember, voting starts sometime in January. People aren't going to vote for you if they don't remember what your movie is, right? So it's imperative that you release it somewhere right before voting starts. You want to be in the front of people's minds when they're filling out their ballots. Many films have realized this. It's why somewhere around mid-October, it always feels like there's a new major release happening almost every single day. For a good reason. Here's a statistic for you. Every single Best Picture winner in the past 2 decades was released in or after October, with a few exceptions. The first was Crash, which I believe came out in May. This was such a surprise winner at the Oscars that year that Jack Nicholson was visibly shocked when he announced it the winner.
Crash.
The second exception was Hurt Locker, which essentially just rode Catherine Bigelow's Hollywood it girl status right through to the Oscars. The one other exception was Nomadland. Nomadland, is that how you say it? Nomadland. But that was just because theaters didn't even exist at that time. It was COVID. The world was ending for a hot second, in case you forgot. 0 films have won which were released prior to May. 0.
I just counted the cookies and there are 0 cookies in the box.
Now let's talk about our contenders. The Fablemans came out November 11th. Lovely. You couldn't pick a better date to just shove it in the Oscar voters' faces. Everything Everywhere All at Once, on the other hand, took the whole October rule and just ripped it in half and then stomped on it. In fact, they released their movie last March, 2 weeks before last year's Oscars telecast. Let that sink in for a second. Last year's Oscars telecast hadn't even happened. People weren't even thinking about this year's Oscars yet. This is Oscar suicide. I remember seeing it come out and thinking, what are they doing? So there you have it. Fablemans 1, Everything Everywhere All at Once, 0. Next, Oscar voters love what they consider an important film. An important film is a film that illustrates the human condition. It's typically about a person's struggle and an ability to overcome the odds. Think characters with disabilities or who suffered from discrimination, or maybe they even lived in their car at some point. Oscar voters love that. These kinds of films tend to be one or more of these three things. 1, period pieces. They take place in another time period. 2, they're based on a true story. Or 3, they're about important historical figures. These three things are like candy for the Oscar voters. I mean, they just can't get enough of them. You get bonus points if you take a gorgeous Hollywood movie star and make them ugly. Like throw on some grungy makeup, a fake nose, tell them to gain a few pounds, and bada boom, they get an Oscar too. The Fablemans does this times 3. It's a period piece, takes place in the 50s, a true story, basically, and it's about one of the biggest historical names in history. Well, at least by Hollywood standards, Steven Spielberg. If you wanted to see Steven Spielberg overcome anti-Semitism as a child, dressed in 50s clothes, this film is for you. This is an Oscar voter's dream. Everything Everywhere takes place in the multiverse. I'm assuming it's not a true story. And the main character owns a laundromat, which is important to me since I don't have a washer and dryer, but she's not exactly an important historical figure. So yeah, one more point for the Fablemans. Now, something that may or may not surprise you, given all the teary acceptance speeches, is that Oscar voters love to cry. Listen to this. An astonishing 93% of Best Picture Oscar winners are a drama. Take that in. 93%. That leaves 7% to be divvied up between comedy, sci-fi, fantasy, action, animated, documentary, all of them. The last comedy to win Best Picture was La La Land, and that was a musical. What?
I'm sorry. No, there's a mistake.
The last comedy to win Best Picture was Shakespeare in Love, unless you count The Artist, which is debatable. On top of that, only 2 of the winners have been action or fantasy. The Fablemans is arguably one of the biggest tearjerkers of the year. If Oscar voters want to take credit for somebody else's struggle and cry about it, this is their film. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is, I think, something that we're all aware of. Oscar voters are selfish. They all want to win, they all want their buddies to win, and if you want to break into the game, you gotta wait your turn. Now, this has been changing in recent years. Parasite and Coda are examples of that. But for the most part, if you're a veteran of the Oscar race, the path to a future Oscar win is much clearer. 75% of Best Picture winners have actors, directors, writers, producers, or any other contributors that have been nominated in the past. I mean, I guess it makes sense because they're all good. The chances of them making more good stuff is pretty high. But still, that must make being a first-time nominee feel a little ganged up on. The cast and crew of The Fablemans have been showered in Oscar love. I mean, they must have all just bumped into each other in the hallway of the Academy and were like, hey, want to make a movie? Between all of them, they have a whopping 33 Oscar nominations. 33. The creative team behind Everything Everywhere has, let me check my notes. 0. Which blows my mind. It has some of the most talented people in the industry. Michelle Yeoh and Jamie Lee Curtis are examples of this. These two are so overdue for an Oscar nomination, the Academy should just give them trophies for their bodies of work. Although I guess that's an honorary Oscar. Everything Everywhere All at Once. It has so many elements that made it what it was. It's a bonkers yet touching script. The actors gave nuanced yet brave performances, and it's all whipped together with special effects that perfectly toe the line of motion sickness. The wacky title is spot on. I wish the Oscars would just share the wealth, and they would just give Oscars to the top few instead of just the top 1. But here we are, and we're just gonna have to hope for an Oscar surprise. There you have it. This is the reason why The Fablemans is probably gonna win the Oscar this year. They should really just start getting their Oscar speech ready. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this.
This is not a joke. I'm afraid they read the wrong thing.
This is not a joke. Moonlight has won Best Picture. Moonlight.